We're back with a bonus conversation you'll only see here on CBS News New York. So you also ran
in the bonus part, can I curse in the bonus part?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
Great. Excellent.
Feel free to do that. So here's the deal. You also ran for mayor. I wonder, what's your take on how Mayor Adams is doing now in handling all the myriad of problems that the city faces?
So, I mean, look, I'm not crazy about the way he's handled the migrant crisis, not the nuts and bolts of it, but his public posture about it.
It's going to bankrupt the city. It's not going to bankrupt the city.
Yeah,
no,
it's a little bit. And look, being mayor of the city means dealing with big stuff that's visited upon us. This is not 9/11. This is not the fiscal crisis. This is not the Depression. This is not the 1970s when the city was emptying out. These are problems. These are problems. But they're also, you know, let's remember, we lost about 5% of our population. Now we're gaining back some of our population. Our city would be nowhere if we didn't have immigrants during the Giuliani years and during the Koch years. You know, the Bronx is not burning. Now we're trying to figure out where to put people in the Bronx. All that being said, that part of being mayor is you are a spokesman for urban issues around the country. And you're also get dragged into federal issues all the time. That's part of the job. So my only critique of him is that, look, I would have handled this differently. I would have said, look, this is a problem. Someone wants to send, people want to come here. Remember, no one's getting on a bus, theoretically, unless they want to come to New York. If you had buses going from Texas, going to Des Moines, no one would get on them. But coming to New York, everyone wants to come to New York. Now, I do think things like the Callahan Decree that require that we provide housing really should be revisited. It's a very different time.
He's in court trying to do that.
It's very difficult to do that. Well, consent decree, you need to get the agreement of three parties, not only the city, you got to get the agreement of the Coalition for the Homeless and the court to decide this. It's difficult. I'm not denying that it is. But if you look at the numbers that have just come out recently about the budget of the city, we're doing okay. And I think that one of the things that Eric Adams has to do is say, look, you know, the people of the city of New York, I got this. I'm going to try to handle this as competent as way possible and be as frugal as possible. Some of these things that have come out about contracts and we're going to put people here but not there. We're going to have some things going to be built places where they're not supposed to be. That's what dealing with an emergency is sometimes like. Not everything goes smoothly. But overall, it's a function of his footing that I really have the most critique about.
But his poll numbers are really not good right now. And I wonder if you think that he can come back or he is going to be vulnerable to a challenge from the left because they feel he's too much of a centrist.
I don't know. The challenge for his opponents are, do you come up from his left and from his right? I have a theory now that polling is going to be bad for incumbents for here on out. That we live in an environment of a constant barrage of people taking shots at you. It seems to be palpably different. You're an excellent person to talk about this, given your history in New York media, both on the print side and on the TV side. I think it is very, very difficult for a modern-day executive of a city to try to craft a narrative that is positive when there is such an incentive on all of these outlets in the media and all of the individual voices to carp about how bad an individual thing is.
So are you saying that we in the media make politicians disposable?
No, I think that it's more a function of this is always a challenge of being an executive in New York City. Crime is coming down in New York City. That is a fact. But it doesn't do anything to stop the New York Post from putting on the front page that, there was a gang fight at Times Square and one of the people that was stabbed was a migrant and these other things. That's part of the job of being mayor. I just think that when we all look at polling, we should realize that it doesn't reflect what people actually deal with on the ballot, which is a binary. Who are these two people? Now, the challenge that Adams has is in the days of ranked choice voting. It makes it very difficult to say, well, is it going to be from the left or going to be from the right? What if you get 3 from the left and 1 from the right? Does that change the formula? It used to a great deal because then you say, oh, the left will divide up. Well, ranked choice voting, they eventually coalesce in a place. If I were Adams, again, I do more punditry than I used to. I used to always say to my staff, we don't do punditry, we just do policy. I would be more concerned about a challenge from the left. I think that's more likely to be where it's from. But it's hard to tell. I mean, it's hard to tell. I think the larger question for Adams is going to be getting whatever investigation is happening, getting that out of the way, because that cuts left and right. People don't like people when they're investigated.
But see, the thing for Adams is this, that a lot of the people on the left they think he's too middle of the road. But the question is whether they can agree on 1 or 2 people to run against him and not have 5 or 6 people where then they dilute their vote.
But you don't in a ranked choice voting. In ranked choice, if you have 7 or 8 people from the left, eventually they all coalesce theoretically behind the left candidate. Every single one of those votes goes to one person. Look, it's important that the mayor understand, your viewers understand this, you understand this. The mayor didn't come in with some massive mandate. The number of actual people
it was a tight race.
It was a very tight race, right? And it was a busy race, and you can see. So one of the things I like to do is look at, all right, what is the coalition he put together to get elected, and does it still exist today?
Does it exist today?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know, will African-American middle-class voters in the boroughs return to him? Do more senior voters return to him? Do they not get reflected in the polls? It's not really clear. I mean, a lot of it, I think, is going to be what he chooses. I mean, to some degree, he has some control over what he does, in that he has allowed, in my view, he's allowed this migrant crisis to be the defining thing of the last year or so. Which is fine. Sometimes you want to take on a challenge and say, okay, I'm here to rebuild the city after September 11th. That's going to be my thing. And he could have said, my deal is trying to figure out a safe, frugal way to deal with this situation. I'm on it. I don't think he's done that latter thing. I think he's allowed the issue to control him a little bit, but he seems to be getting his footing now.
But on the other hand, I think he feels that the president should have done a lot more, and that the federal government should have done a lot more, and that people in the New York delegation, including Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, should have delivered a lot more to help their own city.
When you are the mayor of the city of New York, he has no reason to have been, but you've got to be more of an expert on what it means to be a Democrat. And what it means to be a Democrat is to see that the responsibility for the reason we have these expenses, the reason we have this problem is Republicans. I ask you, Marcia, can someone point to me the 2017 Trump Immigration Reform Act of Trump Immigration Reform Act of 2018? Can someone point to me any effort by the Republicans to solve this problem? Nicole Malliotakis wants to criticize this. She's in Congress now. May I see the bill that deals with amending the immigration laws? They won't even take it up. So now, he's not as good at doing that as I am. I would have been a better mayor. But the
with
fact,
no false modesty.
But the fact remains, I wouldn't have run if I didn't think. But not understanding that dynamic leads him to step into traps. Governor Abbott sends him stuff to do a political stunt. Okay, you do whatever you want to. Some governor of some faraway state wants to send busloads of people. Fine, we handle busloads of people every single day. It's but he chose to make it. He got dragged into this national fight, not being fully prepared. I think he's getting his footing under him now. We see the budget isn't devastated the way it was predicted to be.
Because there was an increase in tax revenues. I mean, we have to say that.
I know, but it's also, we had a relatively tiny number of people came in relative to our city. We hear
179,000.
I know that's a lot. It's a lot of people that came in, but we lost 330,000 or 340,000 during COVID. The same exact critics who are blasting the city, going, "I'm moving to Florida." To DeSantis is Florida. Is DeSantis still a thing? Does he stop being a thing?
He's still a thing.
He's basically not a thing anymore because suddenly Florida.
He's not running.
No, I'm just saying he was crushed because his whole Florida is the place that's so amazing. No, the American people were like, wait a minute. No, we want people who are going to solve problems. And I think if Eric Adams leans into the idea, I'll deal with the Washington and Albany piece. I got it. I'm competent enough to. But here are the 2 or 3 aspirational things I see for the city in the future. Make those clear, make those defined, make those the thing you hear people talking about all the time. I think he'll be rewarded for that.
So Mayor Adams says that there are 2 types of Americans, those who live in New York and those who wish they could. You agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, look, a lot of people have lost sight of the idea that, as migrants come over the border, they're looking to come to New York. And, some knuckleheads say, oh, because they want a free housing out at Floyd Bennett Field sleeping in the rain. No, they come here because this is where there are communities of similar people. This is a welcome. This is a city that has other immigrants. This is a city that has work. This is a city that represents all that the United States of America is. Our immigration laws are a mess. They're completely broken. They need to be updated every 20 years. We haven't done it in 50 years. Put that aside for a moment. Let's remember, still, New York is the place that people want to come. And whether it's someone who's coming here as an immigrant or someone who is coming here because they're an H-1 visa and they're the most technologically savvy people around, that's something to be very proud of.
So you are a lifelong New Yorker. Would you ever want to live any place else, and if so, where?
No.
No?
I mean, I spent some time in prison in Massachusetts. It was the longest time I ever spent. But the answer is no, I can't. I mean, part of it is so much of my identity is wrapped up with my New Yorkness.
But you're a New Yorker.
Yeah, and I can't imagine living anywhere else.
You wouldn't go to DeSantis's Florida where half of New York is now living?
I would go visit my constituents for a couple of months. The answer is no. I mean, look, first of all, everything I look at is through the lens of being a New Yorker. And it's hard to be in other cities and not have that same perspective about, like, oh my goodness, a great city, but ... and then the 9 things that New York City has that other places don't. So no, I would never consider.
So if you had to play tour guide for somebody coming in out of town, what would be a must-see place that you would take them in New York?
Well, I would get them off of Manhattan Island because I think there's amazing things in Manhattan, and I live here now. But, you know, like I would do things like I would take them on the Staten Island Ferry, both to see the Statue of Liberty, but also to see Staten Island. I would take them to the neighborhoods of the boroughs so they get a sense for kind of what the communities are like. I mean, look, my sensibilities about being a New Yorker are very much kind of this outer borough thing, and I live in Manhattan now, and I love it. It's great. But the idea of what really makes New York a place is that New York is, you know, we don't have any part of the city that truly does the shutdown thing that other major cities do. Other major cities, downtown at night is downtown at night, and it shuts off. Our city never does that, but also the stuff that's going on out in the communities, the art stuff that goes on, the food stuff that goes on is a very unique thing about it.
So you want to take people on a food tour of New York?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, as you can see, I'm still not a real food guy, but my brother's a chef. I mean, yes, but more to get people the idea that, you know, you ask someone in Queens where they're from, they don't say Queens, they say Glendale. Or you ask someone in Brooklyn where they're from, more often than not they'll say Flatbush or they'll say Ditmas Park. And that part of being a New Yorker, I think a lot of people who just view this beautiful skyline of New York,
they don't understand.
They don't get that.
You know,
they don't kind of get that. There's 8 million people. It swells to 12 million during the day. Everyone comes in here to work. But after that, there's a whole city out there that's really amazing.
So what's the biggest quality of life issue facing New York City right now?
You know, I think that we still have a problem with commercial shopping strips, that there are still places that have either not reopened or have, I mean, I see, and every New Yorker I think does, I see a lot more mental health problems on the streets. I think we still haven't recovered from COVID in that regard. I think those people were turned out of mental facilities, were abandoned. I think we are going to be dealing with the ramification of COVID for decades in ways large and small. I think the proliferation of illegal pot shops is a real problem, and I think that, you know, the way that law was not...
But we can't seem to solve it.
Well, you know, it's not a hard problem to solve if the state would get out of our way. Just give the enforcement authority to the NYPD. If you know, I have an illegal pot shop 2 doors down from my house. I asked the local beat officer, come take a walk with me. It says on the front how much each type of pot. I said, just have an unmarked guy go in there and buy it and then arrest the guy. And he's like, no, we got to call the sheriff. It's actually Department of Business Affairs. It's a licensing, blah, 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 blah. If you just change the law to say that selling marijuana when you're not a licensed dispensary is still a felony, and that wherever it's done, you use body house laws to say you can seize that building, I think that the state made that part unnecessarily complicated. Again, whenever there's a problem, it's always the state getting in the way of the city doing the job.
So I got to ask, are you still a Mets fan?
Is the Pope Catholic? Yeah, of course I'm a Mets fan.
You're a long-suffering Mets fan.
You can't. You see, this is what I don't understand. One of the biggest fights I ever got into with Chuck Schumer, I shouldn't say this, so hopefully he's not watching, is...
He's in Ukraine, actually.
Yeah, I know that. It was in 2000, they have the Subway Series. And people like you were calling around all the politicians who you were rooting for. And Chuck was then a senator. I had recently been elected to Congress. And someone calls up and said, well, I'm with the Mets. And the reporter says, I don't know who it was. Might have been the guy with the New York Times, short guy with the glasses, used to cover Room 9, starts with an N. Last name. Nagurny. I think Nagurny was doing the calls. And Nagurny calls around, and I say, oh, I'm obviously the Mets. He said, oh, that's great. You know, not all the politicians are so quick to give an answer. I'm like, really? Who's not pooping or getting off the pot? You got to be one or the other. And he says, Chuck Schumer. So they put the quote in his story of these politicians have to whatever, and Chuck was furious. He says, you can't, don't mess with baseball or whatever it is. He's, anyway.
You still play hockey?
I do. And now my son is playing. He's 12. He's playing. I'm getting less and less good at it as I get older, but I'm still playing.
So what's something that people don't know about you?
Marcia, people know way, way too much about me. Let's just put it that way.
Oh, come on. There must be something they don't know.
First of all, I had been in public life a long time, and then with all of my scandals and everything, I am like, my life is probably more of an open book than maybe any politician in American life. As a matter of fact, when I came back and I was running in 2013, before I had my second flare-up of all of this stuff, and people would be critical of me, I would say to them, I said, look, you know more about me than you know about any other politician. And that's not good. I'm embarrassed by a lot of the things you know about me. But I'm like, I play hockey. I'm in a 12-step recovery program that I attend regularly. My son is 12 years old now and is a handful. I live right down the hall from Huma, who is doing amazing. So it's like my life is pretty much an open book.
So change is sort of essential to life, but it's also scary. How do you deal with change?
Well, I think that, one of the most important changes in my life is this notion of just looking down at one's feet and realizing that all that I can do is the now, is that the source of all discontent is wanting the future or the past to be different. And I just think that, generally speaking, as a human being, that can be cancerous. There is a saying in my program, abandon all hope of a better past. Like, the past is what it's going to be, and the future we have very limited control over. So if you live that way, it allows you to just position yourself saying, well, I'm going to try to do the next right thing. It used to be, if I got a call from a reporter who would say, come and do an interview show with me, it would go through all kinds of different filters. What am I trying to promote? What am I afraid that what kind of thing, why might it hurt me? What kind of shirt should I wear? What kind of strategy should I use? What did that reporter say about me 4 months ago that I'm pissed off about? The present version of me, and maybe it just comes with age, is that the next right thing is to talk to an old friend about issues about my city, and if it doesn't work out well or I say something that someone doesn't like, I don't care as much. Now, you can do that to a limited degree as a politician because you're constantly thinking about, I got to get reelected, I have to represent my constituents. But I think if more people kind of took the posture of, look, all I have is right now trying to make the next right decision I have, I think voters and citizens and friends and lovers, they forgive you if you get it wrong, so long as your motivations are at least in the right place.
So what brings you joy right now?
Well, as much of a headache as a 12-year-old is, Jordan gives me immense joy. I still like, hanging out with my friends and playing hockey. And I really like being on the radio on WABC. Going in, I think the people I always understood this in politics, but even more so now, people that disagree with me are not bad people. And there are lots of people out there who vehemently disagree with me, and I enjoy very much the idea of engaging with them and having conversations. Now, sometimes people are and they're going to be mean, or they're going to say I hate you or post something nasty about me online. But I think by and large people are well-meaning and we have the same fundamental motivations.
One of the things that struck me about your show was that you would say, so-and-so Bob is one of my best callers, and then he would light into you. Yeah. Or so-and-so is another one of my best callers, and they would excoriate you. So you seem to enjoy it.
Well, we try to, for the 100th episode, we try to actually encourage some of our regular callers. But being a regular caller sometimes means they regularly disagree with me.
And apparently they do.
I don't raise the bar to the point of having someone turn off the radio after 2 hours and say, I was a Trump supporter, and now I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. Nor do I say to my callers that you have to abandon your biases that you come in with. And part of the purpose of the show is that everyone can watch the exchange and say, you know what? I didn't have that viewpoint. I didn't know that existed. I didn't, we have
So you're educating people.
I be careful not to say that because it sounds highfalutin, but I really do believe the idea that no one knows, you heard me say this on the show, I don't believe anyone knows absolute truth but God, but we can agree on the facts.
You do explain things.
Right.
And you try to give them what you call the facts.
I do my best. And I'm up against a lot. talking about the Hunter Biden case, and I take great pride in the fact that the Hunter Biden case is something that I must have done 15 episodes that to some degree took the latest news about Hunter Biden, because I do think there was an argument to be made the left paid too little attention and the right paid too much, and someplace in the middle was a reasonable listeners to the news would want to go find what's going on. In case like that, people are getting deluged on the right with things that are just not true, that are provable, knowable, not true. And so I have to hack through a lot, and sometimes it doesn't work. And sometimes I'll have the exact same person call me on the radio saying the exact same thing that I thought I had corrected the last time they called. But that isn't dissimilar from talking to my Uncle Irving at Thanksgiving.
Last question. What's next for Anthony Weiner?
As I just explained, I don't like to do a lot of that. I'm not gaming or scheming. I do like to do radio. I'm doing more of it, and maybe I'll have it up to do more on WABC. I give them a lot of credit. 770 on the AM dial has been around forever in different formats. They are a conservative radio station, but John Katzimatidis, another New York institution, a supermarket guy who became an oil guy, now he owns a radio, and they've created quite a powerful station. I don't mind being the Democratic voice there.
The only Democratic voice.
Look, it's much more valuable to me to being the 50th person on MSNBC, right? In my view, it's much more interesting to me. So will I do more of this? I don't know.
Thank you so much for joining me,
It's been my
and thank
pleasure.
you at home for joining us as well.